Have you ever stopped to think about why so many eyes are turned towards Jerusalem right now? And what if I told you that prophecies written thousands of years ago are being fulfilled before our eyes, and almost no one is noticing? In this video, you will discover 7 biblical prophecies about Jerusalem that are happening right now and understand why this changes everything for those seeking spiritual answers in such uncertain times. If you feel that something is wrong with the world but don't know where to start, this may be the message that will awaken your faith. Stay until the end and see with your own eyes what the Bible had already foretold. In the heart of the Middle East, there is a city that seems small in the face of the modern world, but carries a historical, spiritual, and prophetic weight like no other: Jerusalem. Over the centuries, kings, empires, religions, and nations have fought battles for it, and to this day, the name of this city continues to be featured in the headlines of international newspapers. But the big question is, why is Jerusalem so important? Why is this city, which could be just another point on the map, always at the center of global tensions, and more than that, at the center of biblical prophecies? The answer begins with what the scriptures reveal about Jerusalem's unique role in God's plan. From the days of Abraham to the apocalyptic visions of the book of Revelation, Jerusalem appears as a symbol of the divine presence, the stage of the history of salvation, and the spiritual axis of the world. It is, for the Jews, the location of the Holy Temple. For Christians, the place where Jesus was crucified and resurrected. And for Muslims, one of the holiest sites in Islam. 3 of the world's largest religions contest the same land, and all of them, directly or indirectly, recognize Jerusalem as a place with a purpose that transcends the natural. But there is something even deeper. The Bible reveals that Jerusalem is not just a city with history, it is a prophetic city. God chose it as the place where he would establish his name forever, 1 Kings 11:36. It is also where, according to the prophets, the final events of humanity will take place. The book of Zechariah, for example, says that the nations will gather against Jerusalem in the last days, Zechariah 14. And in Revelation, the heavenly Jerusalem is presented as the final destination of the saved. Revelation 21. The city that has been destroyed, recaptured, rebuilt, and besieged more than 40 times continues to be God's prophetic clock. When we look at the current scenario, it is impossible to ignore how this is happening right before our eyes. Wars and rumors of wars, peace agreements, and religious tensions all concentrate around Jerusalem, and the most impressive thing, these modern occurrences are no surprise to those who read the Bible. They were announced in detail thousands of years ago. What to many might seem like coincidence or geopolitics, to those who know the scriptures, is the literal fulfillment of prophecies. When we look at the current scenario, we realize that there is a place in the world that, despite its small territorial size, can shake economies, provoke wars, and divide opinions on a global scale: Jerusalem. And the most surprising part is that this is not a coincidence, but the direct fulfillment of an ancient biblical prophecy. In Zechariah 12:2-3, it is written, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all the peoples round about. In that day, I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all peoples. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." This passage is one of the most striking prophetic declarations in the Bible. It predicts that Jerusalem would become an unsustainable problem for the nations, something like a political, religious, and cultural burden that no world power could solve without getting hurt. Exactly what we are witnessing today. To understand the weight of this prophecy, we need to go back in time. For centuries, Jerusalem was conquered, destroyed, occupied, and rebuilt by different empires, the Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, and British. But the tension truly erupted after the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, and especially after the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel took full control of East Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount stands, a sacred site for both Jews and Muslims. Since then, Jerusalem has become the most sensitive point on the planet. A small territory, smaller than the city of São Paulo, concentrates the focus of the UN, NATO, the Arab League, the European Union, the US, Russia, China, and practically all the relevant governments of the world. Which other city in the world can claim this? With every attempt at peace agreements, Jerusalem's status remains the biggest obstacle. The Palestinians claim it as their capital, while Israel asserts that Jerusalem is its eternal and indivisible capital. The impasse is so deep that no political agreement has been able to resolve this issue, just as Zechariah predicted, a burdensome stone that harms all who try to lift it. If the first prophecy warned us that Jerusalem would become a center of global tension, this second one goes further. The Bible declares that all nations at some point will gather against this city. This is not just an escalation of the conflict, it is the culmination of a spiritual and political process that has been unfolding for centuries. In Zechariah 14:2, we find the foundation of this prophecy. I will gather all the nations to fight against Jerusalem. The city will be captured, the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be cut off from the city. This is one of the most dramatic and specific passages in the Old Testament. It describes an invasion of global proportions, a coalition of nations rising against Jerusalem in a coordinated act of aggression. And this is not just symbolism. The text is direct, almost journalistic. The city will be besieged. The consequences will be devastating. And this precedes a direct divine intervention. What is most striking about this prophecy is how it aligns with the contemporary global context. Never before in history have we had so many structures of global governance capable of making unified decisions. Organizations like the UN, NATO, the G20, and the Security Council, in theory, have the power to organize multinational actions, including military ones, based on global interests. And Jerusalem today is seen by many of these organizations as a problem. And Jerusalem today is seen by many of these organizations as a problem that needs to be resolved for the sake of global peace. But what seems like a legitimate concern is actually the fulfillment of a prophetic reality, a subtle and progressive movement towards the unification of nations against God's plan. In practice, how could this happen? We can imagine a plausible sequence, a more intense regional crisis in the Middle East involving Israel, Palestine, and other Arab countries. Global pressure for a final solution involving Jerusalem. The creation of an international agreement, possibly mediated by a charismatic world leader. The imposition of terms that violate biblical principles and Israel's sovereignty, especially concerning control over Jerusalem. Israel and its allies' reaction, and in response, a global mobilization against Jerusalem. This is not fiction. We've seen similar structures in past conflicts, such as the Gulf military coalitions, joint actions against regimes in the Middle East, and sanctions imposed on recalcitrant countries. It's enough for the Jerusalem problem to be sold to public opinion as the cause of global instability for the perfect scenario to be created for the literal fulfillment of this prophecy. Additionally, Zechariah 14 clearly states that the invasion and suffering of Jerusalem will occur before God's intervention. This points to a time of unprecedented distress for the people of Israel, and it connects with the description by the prophet Daniel about the final week, Daniel 9:27, as well as the great tribulation described by Jesus in Matthew 24. The idea of all nations against Jerusalem also appears in Revelation 16:14 and 16, where John speaks of the preparation of the nations for the battle of Armageddon, a final confrontation in which the world turns against God and his people. Again, the geographical center of this conflict is the same, the land of Israel. Here, it is important to understand the spiritual aspect behind the physical conflict. It's not just about foreign policy, religion, or oil. It's about a global resistance to the divine plan, and Jerusalem, being the stage of redemption, becomes the main target of the spiritual enemy. The nations will unite not just against Israel, but against the God of Israel. The scene is dramatic. The nations are gathered against Jerusalem. The city is in suffering, half of the population taken captive, the walls broken. In this setting of darkness and despair, the sky opens. God not only sends deliverance, he himself descends. This is the promise of one of the most powerful prophecies in the Bible, the return of the Messiah on the Mount of Olives. Zechariah 14:4 records this moment with startling clarity. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, making a very large valley. This prophecy is directly linked to the coming of the Messiah. For Christians, it points to the return of Jesus Christ. For the Jewish people, it is the arrival of the long-awaited deliverer. In both cases, the Mount of Olives is the central place of divine manifestation. But why this location? The spiritual and historical significance of the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is not just a geographical point. It's a profound spiritual symbol. It was there that Jesus taught about the last days, Matthew 24, wept over Jerusalem, Luke 19:41, prayed in agony before the crucifixion, Luke 22:39-44, and, importantly, where he ascended to heaven, Acts 1:9-12. And more, the angels who appeared at the ascension clearly told the disciples that Jesus would return the same way he ascended. That is, visibly, personally, and in the same place. This same Jesus, who was taken up from you into heaven, will so come in like manna as you saw him go into heaven. Acts 1:11. This link between the ascension and the return is the bridge connecting the New and Old Testaments, showing that Zechariah 14:4 and Acts 1:11 speak of the same event, the glorious return of the Lord. A supernatural intervention. The text in Zechariah is even more detailed. The mountain will split. The geography will be altered by a divine presence, so intense that it will literally crack the earth. A valley will emerge, creating an escape route for the remaining people in Jerusalem. So far, we've seen how the prophecies about Jerusalem and the end times connect with current events and the promise of a glorious future. But have you ever stopped to think about how these prophecies impact your personal life? How they can change the way you live, face daily challenges, and even relate to others? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal how the practical application of these prophecies can transform your faith and your spiritual journey. Don't go anywhere! After Armageddon and the final judgment, the scenario will change drastically. Humanity, finally freed from the dominion of evil, will be led into a new era under the direct reign of Christ, the millennial kingdom. This 1,000-year period, described in Revelation 20, not only marks the total victory over the forces of evil, but also the time of restoration of what was lost through sin, where creation will be renewed and restored to its original condition, without pain, suffering, or death. The meaning of the millennial kingdom. The concept of a millennial kingdom is found in Revelation 20:4-6. The passage describes Christ's reign on earth after the ultimate defeat of Satan. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received his mark upon their foreheads or hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. During this 1,000-year period, Christ will reign with those who remained faithful to him, and Satan will be bound, unable to deceive the nations. This reign will be peaceful, filled with justice, wisdom, and prosperity, restoring the blessings that were lost with man's fall. The key to understanding the millennial kingdom is recognizing that it is not merely a transitional period, but a complete renewal of the earth where evil will have no place. Throughout these 1,000 years, the promises made to Israel will be fulfilled, and creation as a whole will be restored. The binding of Satan. One of the most notable features of the millennial kingdom will be the binding of Satan. Revelation 22:3 says that Satan will be seized and thrown into the abyss, where he will remain for 1,000 years. This ensures that during Christ's reign, he will no longer be able to deceive the nations or incite evil. The imprisonment of Satan is essential to understanding how the millennial kingdom will be marked by peace and prosperity. Without the presence of the enemy, the world will be governed by Christ's justice and mercy, allowing all the inhabitants of the earth to live fully and harmoniously. The reign of Christ, justice and peace. During the millennial kingdom, Christ will be the universal sovereign and will rule with complete justice and equity. He will be King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and his reign will be characterized by the elimination of all injustice and the restoration of order in creation. As described in Isaiah 11:4-9, Christ's reign will bring about an era of lasting peace, where even animals will live in harmony and where violence and destruction will be no more. With the millennial kingdom completed, the final judgment carried out, and the total restoration of creation accomplished, humanity enters the final phase of the divine plan, eternity with God. This is the culmination of all the promises made to his followers, where death, pain, and evil no longer have a place, and the presence of God will be the eternal reality for all the redeemed. The concept of eternity. With God, eternity is the definitive and unchangeable state that follows the final judgment. There will no longer be any separation between God and his people, as there was throughout human history, where sin caused disruption and barriers. In this new state, God's presence will be complete and uninterrupted, and believers will live in direct and intimate communion with the Creator. As revealed in Revelation 21:3, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. They shall be his people, and God himself will be with them." Eternity with God will be the culmination of God's plan of redemption, where humanity will be restored to its ideal condition, without sin, without suffering, without death. Everything that was once corrupted will be completely renewed, and the faithful will live forever in perfect harmony with the Creator and with one another. The New Jerusalem, God's dwelling with his people. In Revelation 21, the vision of the New Jerusalem is revealed, the holy city descending from heaven, prepared to be God's eternal dwelling with his people. It symbolizes the perfect place of union between God and humanity, where there will be no more pain, sorrow, or death, for the former things have passed away. The city is described as radiant and glorious, with streets of pure gold and gates made of pearls, reflecting the purity and perfection of God. Revelation 21:18-21 describes its magnificence. The city was made of pure gold, like clear glass. The foundations of the city walls were adorned with every kind of precious stone. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. This new Jerusalem will be the place where the redeemed from every nation, tribe, people, and language will dwell with God, with no more separation or conflict. Here, the unity of all peoples will be established eternally and perfectly, fulfilling God's promise to restore His original creation.